Hello, 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 folks. Hey, Chef Tate, thank you so much for joining us. Yes,
Thank
amazing.
you.
Thank you so much, Chef
Thank you.
Dobson, for joining us. I see that we're having some people start to join the live. I appreciate we have already 12 folks here. Good evening to all that are here with us. My name is Onyx Ramirez, and I'm the Senior Communications Manager at Black Farmer Fund. I want to thank everybody who's here so far for coming into the space and being in community with us. To Chef Omar Tate and Chef Laquanda Dobson, thank you both so much for letting Black Farmer Fund take over your Instagram for just an hour in preparation for Giving Tuesday. I'm going to give folks a little bit more time to join us. And in these couple minutes, I would love for folks who are joining to drop in the chat, what is your favorite holiday meal? So, what are you so happy that you get to eat during the holidays or that you get to cook during the holidays? For me, it's pernil, which is like the pork, the picnic. I think it's the shoulder. So that's for me. How about y'all, Chef Dobson, Chef Tate? What's your favorite holiday food?
Oh man. Probably this year it was the greens. Sybil hooked it up. She made smoked turkey with collard greens, and it was funny. She ordered them, and she ordered them from Instacart because everybody's busy, and they actually sent fresh but frozen greens, and and we were like, oh man, are they going to be good? And then they just turned out to be
Mm.
really amazing. So
Can't
yeah,
forget the
they're good.
greens. How about you, Chef Dobson? I think we're having some trouble with the Instagram live.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
seeing, I'm seeing, oh, okay, we're here. We're back. We're back. Are you here with us?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. So the question is, what is your favorite holiday meal? People are dropping it in the chat to kind of get things started.
Cool. Omar, did you finish saying what you were saying? What did Sybil cook?
Oh,
Oh,
it was greens,
okay.
collard greens with
I would
smoked
say
turkey.
my mom's cornbread. She actually
Mm.
puts corn in there and it tastes so delicious. Anything I don't have to cook
Mm.
on Thanksgiving is
Mm.
delicious.
That is so real. Um,
Definitely.
Cornbread sounds so good, especially with the real corn in it. I forget who put me onto that, but that's the key, the little bits of juicy corn in there. So, thank you both so much for sharing. I see people are putting everything on their plate. People are saying banana pudding. People are saying anything with jerk seasoning. So I feel like we're active now. We can kind of get started and get into the conversation. So really, thank you all again so much for being here. The intention of this Instagram Live is to raise some awareness about Black Farmer Fund and to get folks thinking about Giving Tuesday as we are in the midst of the holidays. So for folks who may not know, Giving Tuesday is the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And the focus of this day is to redirect funds towards nonprofits that are having some type of impact socially. So we're here to uplift Black Farmer Fund and get folks thinking about the values, aligned decisions that we make around food. Um, and also, like, really to share some of the amazing work that's being done at Sankofa Community Farms, at Bartram's Garden, and also at Honeysuckle Provisions with Chef Omar Tate. I'm really excited to talk about the amazing work that y'all are doing. And for folks who are new to Black Farmer Fund, BFF is a nonprofit and community led investment fund for Black farmers and food businesses throughout the Northeast. We have an investment committee that's comprised of 10 Black food actors from across the Northeast, farmers, chefs, activists, and we are currently making decisions for our first round of deployment. So be on the lookout for the next cohort of investees that are going to be supported by BFF Funds 2.0. And for this specific fundraiser for Giving Tuesday, 100% of the funds that are donated through our Give Butter will be redistributed into our regranting pool. We're also selling some dope merch. So without further ado, I'm excited to jump into the conversation and to be joined by two incredible chefs, activists. I'm here with Chef Omar Tate and Chef Laquanda Dobson. Omar Tate is a chef, culinary artist, and social entrepreneur, and owner-operator of Honeysuckle Provisions. And Laquanda Dobson is a chef, culinary cultures coordinator, and farm manager at Sankofa Community Farm at Bartram's Garden, all in Philly. So we're here with heavy Philly rep. I'm going to be asking them questions about their experience as Black food actors and learning, you know, from them how to be in a just relationship with our food system based on the work that we do. So to stop talking and give y'all the floor, either one of y'all can start with this question, but I would love to know, how did y'all become interested in the intersection of food and social justice?
Mhm. I mean, I'll jump in here. I think that for me personally, like it was always kind of inherent that food is social justice, not like taking like ethnicity and race out of the equation. Chefs kind of sit at the juxtaposition of, art and food and environment and people. And when you think about food and supply chains, the second I knew that I was a chef and decided to call myself a chef, I knew that I had a huge responsibility that was not just geared towards the responsibility of the end result, which is like a pretty plate for diners, and took that very seriously from the very beginning. I started out as a dishwasher, and so I started out, washing dishes. Didn't go to college, and technically at the bottom. At our shop, there is no bottom. There's no restaurant without a dishwasher, But as a dishwasher, I was also receiving vegetables and products and things like that. And so when things were coming in the door, cases of leeks, cases of celery, 50-pound bags of onions, all these different things, they definitely were coming in a way that I knew at that moment had been touched before. And so for me, the social justice aspect was respecting the product that came into the door to us as a restaurant, and like what came before that, which led me back to people. So, I think that understanding supply chain and capturing all of that led me towards the idea of work. And then as I got older, became more specific to the ideas of, specificity of ethnicity and race, because you break all that down, there are always brown and poor people at the bottom of the supply chain.
Mm. Thank you so much for that, Omar. How about you?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, of course. Really just wanting to understand what brought together the intersection of food and social justice for you. How did those things come together in your life?
Uh, for me, honestly, it started at a very young age. I would say like in high school. Just being involved in like teaching cooking classes throughout West Philadelphia, traveling to the Kellogg's Foundation, and also just being a part of various youth development pathways. I think that's what like made it happen for me, because I really love food. It's just that the activism part came to me first. And I've been cooking since I was 12. So I think it's that connection between like being an activist and also being a chef. Um, but also, I would say, after, doing so much traveling and talking on youth panels and things like that, I developed this, God told me to become a farmer, which like enhanced my skills before, basically what I'm saying is that becoming a farmer has what really enhanced my skills when it comes to like being a part of the activism world and the connection to food.
Mm. So, like, for you, it really came as being a part of cooking, giving back to community, working with the youth, and then you got into the supply chain aspect of things. And it feels kind of similar for you, Omar, where it's like you were cooking, you were washing dishes, and then you started getting these opportunities, and you were like, wait, the food has been somewhere before it got to me.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
for sure.
That's so powerful. I agree. It's something that even when I was growing up, I would never really question like where my food was before it
Right.
got to the supermarket or before it got to my table
Mm-hmm.
or where it was in my hands.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to know a little bit more of like what brought you to Black Farmer Fund. Was it that you are a farmer yourself, Chef Dobson? Is it that you need food for your restaurants, Chef Tate? Like what brought you to BFF?
Oh, yeah.
Well, what actually brought me here was Chef Omar. We've been collaborating over this past year. Um, with Sankofa Community Farms supplying his restaurant with produce. I can talk a little bit more about that later, but I think what's really important to me is to highlight people who look like me, who are actually like farmers and chefs who are like doing this work. So I'm truly grateful to be here to help support this cause because you never know what funding we may need. So I'm just really happy to be here.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, just throughout my career, I mean, when I was a young cook, the farm to table movement was like the big thing happening. 2008, 2009, and I've worked almost exclusively at restaurants that had intimate relationships with the people who were growing the food and bringing the food into the store. I carried that with me throughout my entire career. Working from Philly to New York, and I met I met Olive, one of the founders of Black Farmer Fund, through a mutual friend when she was a younger farmer in Hawaii. And we remained in touch and contact as she was growing, cultivating mushrooms in the South, and then moved back north in Massachusetts. And so we stayed in contact as her career developed and as Black Farmer Fund came into full bloom. And I think it's just all organic relationships and conversations. Obviously, me continuing to be not just interested in farmers and specifically Black farmers and the legacy of Black farming, but also using civilized company to not just invest in farmers in a monetary way, but in a relationship way, because I think the relationship is stronger than the money. And working with Black Farmer Fund last year, doing an event where we helped raise funds and things like that, it was just kind of natural for us to continue to discuss and collaborate and help and watch y'all grow from afar.
Mm. Yeah, it's been really incredible to do this work and be forming relationships with the community because it feels like the most important part is building those bonds. I see someone put in the chat, the relationship is stronger than the money. And this reminds me so much of why BFF exists, like beyond providing capital, right? Which is so important because Black food actors, Black farmers often are not invested into, but there's also all of these other resources that we actually already have, that y'all already have. That knowledge of the land, that knowledge of these recipes that are ancestral, that knowledge of how to be in space with one another. That's something that really came up for me at your dinner last year, Omar, was calling in the ancestors and bringing them to the table and understanding like how important that is. I would love to know from y'all's perspective, like how are y'all incorporating some of that ancestral wisdom and activism into your work as chefs, as restaurateurs, as community activists?
Want to go first, Omar?
There's a big siren going on in the background. You can go ahead and go first. I'm trying to wait for it to pass.
That's real.
Um, let's see. From the work that I do as Chef Dobson, I think it's really important to pray over all of the food before I'm even like cooking. I even pray over all of the pots and pans just to make sure that like whoever I'm cooking for, whoever I'm cooking with, that they know so that I'm protected, so that I'm safe, and that other people also know that their food was made with love and care. At Sankofa Community Farm, we also do that practice as well. Starting in February, we'll be getting new seeds, and we'll be praying over the seeds before we put them into starts. And then, once those starts start to come up and they get their true leaves, we'll be praying that those seeds come up and that they nourish the people who will eat them when we put them into the ground. And it's the same thing when we harvest. I think that it's just like through and through to make sure that, you know, our people aren't getting like crappy food, because sometimes you just don't know what conversations are happening while people are harvesting the food, or while they're putting the seeds in. You know, all of that stuff is like energy. So we try to be very cautious and aware of those things as while we're going from seed to harvest.
Mm. And if I can follow up, where did you learn these practices? Like, is this something that you just felt? You were like, nah, I feel like I need to pray over this, or were you taught that by like family and community?
Well, I grew up in a very spiritual family. I used to go to church with my great grandmother and also some of my childhood friends. Their moms would take me to church. So I guess I always knew how to pray. I always was very in tune with things. I'm also a Pisces, so like I'm very connected. But when I first came to Sankofa Community Farm, Chris Bolden Newsom, he basically mentored me on how to do farming in a spiritual way. I tried to do farming when I was 21, and none of my stuff worked, you know. And I think that the reason why a lot of my crops didn't come up is because I didn't have mentorship, and also God let me know that it wasn't the quite that time for me to be a farmer.
Mm, thank you so much for that. And I'm glad that you persevered. How about you, Chef Tate?
Um, um, I mean, I thought I was calling in the ancestors before until I met Chef Laquanda and Chris at Sankofa. Man, you're not allowed to go through the fence without not just praying, but like the act of prayer, the kneeling, the touching of the soil, the actual calling. And they want to hear you. You know, they want to hear you.
Mm,
But much like Chef Dobson, I grew up in a very spiritual household. We started out as Baptists, and my great grandparents played organ and piano in the church. There were always family photos around. We then converted to Islam when I was not 14, 4 years old. And in that religion, despite what most people think about the religion, there is an intentional calling of God with every step, and the calling of prophets who, if you take that word away, are actually just also ancestors, and the acknowledgement of women in that culture as well.
mm,
The Prophet Muhammad, his wife Khadija, is also someone that we call and make sure is acknowledged. And I don't think that there's really any step of my life where not only were ancestors being called, but living elders being recognized as well, and then prayer over food. Every evening, every meal, every breath, we pray before we leave the house. So actually, as an adult, it was just adulthood and just becoming more involved in the world. Where like, you kind of shed these things to be a part of the world, and not necessarily shed them, but you kind of just forget them, and then you learn as you get older to step back into those practices. And working so closely with Chef Dobson and with Chris at Sankofa has actually allowed me to step back into different practices and ideas of prayer and all these different things. And it's beyond food at that point. Without that spirituality, there is no food, really, in my opinion. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's really it. And although running a business makes it challenging to be as intentional as one would like, I'm not able to do these things every day. But when I do have the intention is there, and when I do have those moments, I am always reminded. And every time I go to the farm at Sankofa, time slows down for me. I don't think there's ever been a moment. I usually show up busy and end up staying. Yeah.
that's awesome. I'm thinking so much. I have so much going through my mind. I'm thinking about this idea of like intention and bringing that intention from growing the food to having it on the plate. And I wonder, like, as y'all are navigating these very real systems of owning a business and being a land steward and operating within the systems that even Sankofa Community Farm operates within as like a public access space as well. Like, how are y'all staying in alignment with your values while navigating all of these very real systems, which can be tricky for like Black business owners, Black farmers to be able to even understand how to approach?
It's a good question. There's a lot of thoughtful compromise that takes place. Do we always do exactly what we want to do, or lead with the kind of like moral intention that we would like if we were just, operating as an individual? Absolutely not. Capitalism just does not allow for that. And personally, what we do is we're the kind of business where we feel like the more money that we make, the more we can invest in making sure that our practices as Black and brown people become more eminent and preeminent in our thought processes in a way that is supported. We often talk about resource and resource allocation, but we're also always dependent upon the same resources for that need and that ask. We don't have enough entities that are financially stable to support the morals that we want to uphold as a community. I would say that Honeysuckle is one, Sankofa is one that's growing into that space. There are a few other nonprofits. We work with a community entity called the Enterprise Center that also seeks to uphold those things. Our initial investor for our business is one of those people who believed in that vision. And the more that we can do as a business, making dollars make sense. I mean, making sandwiches make sense. The more we can invest in other businesses, and in particular the agricultural community, and support them so that their endeavors can also be as supported as us. We're definitely blessed as a business to receive not just the type of community support that we've been able to receive, but also the institutional support. We've gotten a couple of grants, a couple of big grants, and some individual support from folks who really believe in not just our morals and values, but our business acumen.
Thank you for that. How about you, Chef Dobson? What comes to mind as like, how do you stay aligned, trying to do it all?
I think how do I stay aligned is knowing that it's never done work. You know, that's just what it is. It's never done work, and it's not work that you'll make a lot of money off of. And you got to know that like you're basically doing this work for the greater good. Either it's for future generations or it's for yourself right now to sustain your community. So that's how I look at it. I think that it's always important to go with God first with everything that you do. And if it's time to like move on with things in your life, then that's just where you should be. But you'll always have to know how to grow your own food, how to cook your own food, because no one's going to save you. So you got to stay ready.
Mm. This idea of staying ready also feels ancestral, of the legacy of our people telling us that we need to be taking care of each other, and that is deep in like my bones, my DNA. BFF, Black Farmer Fund itself originated from that understanding that Black farmers and food business owners do not have the same access to capital as their white counterparts, because they have been systemically divested from traditional finance. And so in addition to that financial capital, BFF is providing Black farmers with some technical assistance and business coaching, but it's really critical that we as the community be there to fund this work and to strengthen our supply chain. And really wanting to uplift that on Giving Tuesday, which is tomorrow, November 28th. So for folks that are here with us, please head over to our Give Butter, givebutter.com/BFFgiving23, and check out our campaign, because it really is a part of what we're talking about here, is how do we help each other, pull each other forward, I'm also thinking about some of what was brought up by you, Chef Dobson, of like, Black farmers don't necessarily have that consistent income to rely on, and Black businesses don't necessarily have that consistent income to rely on. Like, I would like to know from y'all's understanding, what are some situations faced by Black land stewards, Black business owners that people need to know about? And what are some action steps that people can take?
You want to go first, Omar?
Yeah, I guess one of the biggest challenges that we face as a business is, our pockets ain't that deep. you know, we when we started out, we didn't really have a runway. When I say runway, a lot of businesses are invested in, and the investment includes the initial steps that it takes towards an open, plus some, and sometimes some means several $100,000 worth of runway, so that the business can capture itself, capture the audience that it needs to capture, while still being able to maintain um, labor costs and continue to purchase goods, and all these different things. While we did have some funds, it was pretty immediate that we were just like shelling out cash week to week to make sure that everything made sense, including our labor numbers. And when I say labor, our average employee makes $18 an hour, where here in the state of Pennsylvania, I think the minimum wage is still 10, maybe less. I, don't quote me on that, but it's not a lot. That's for sure. It is not. It is not what everyone's pushing for the national standard to be. And so we're very proud of that. But when you consider that as a Black and brown entrepreneur, or minority entrepreneur in general, that is not backed by a large corporation, that is not backed by legacy family money, that is still paying rent, still paying tons of overhead. We don't own our building. We're not in our granddaddy's former warehouse. We're not in any of that. We really do rely on our community to make sure that we stay afloat. I think action steps that can actually be taken from any individual is to just come into the store and support us by buying a sandwich. Not just because it's delicious, because it really is, but also because we know that when you buy that sandwich, it is supporting local economies. Our flour comes from Castle Valley Mill, which is not Black owned, but it is local. It's within less than 100 miles of our store. A lot of our produce, actually, Sankofa currently is growing a full row of turnips for us for our hoagie that we make. That is lacto fermented and smoked turnips that acts and almost behaves exactly like turkey. So that whenever you spend $1 with us, it's definitely going to Sankofa and the employees there, and the continuing of them being able to practice what they practice. So, and I go further and to say that the only businesses that I really know that really act that way are, one, hyper local, whether Black, brown, or other, but specifically Black businesses. We barter with one another, and that is something that is ancestral, and that it comes from the continent of Africa, where money is nowhere near as important as it is here. The idea of like tax is different in West Africa. The idea of interest on something is very different in West Africa. The value of commodity, that valuation is different, where people are still trading seeds. That's something that I learned being in the South with chefs like Chef BJ Dennis, or a barbecue pitmaster, Dr. Howard Conyers, where the logo for the sweet potato that is our logo for Honeysuckle is drawn by me from the potatoes that are traded within the community down there in Manning, South Carolina, where his family's from. We intentionally do things like that so that energy and spirit stays with us throughout the way that we do business.
That's awesome. And it's also just reminds me of how much people that don't come from a lot want to be able to give so much forward and want to be able to do that work. That's always what I'm reminded of when I see like even some of the farmers that we're working with struggling to make ends meet. But when you go and you actually put labor and put hands on their land, they're like sending you home with baskets of vegetables. And I'm like, nah, listen, like I'm here to support you. I'm here to do this thing. Like it's pro bono. And they're like, we can't operate that way. That's not in our legacy. That's not in our understanding. Chef Dobson. and I saw you smile. What came up for you when you were thinking about this?
Um, I think what made me smile, I just recently made a trip down to Alabama um with the Chesapeake Harvest doing some food safety on farms so that they can get GAP certified and also just come up with a food safety plan. And I just remember visiting this one farm, and they basically let us leave with like so much okra. So like that just reminded me of, you know, the abundance of like when you go to someone's land, they're so excited about what they're growing, they want you to take more with them. I mean, want you to take some home with yourself.
Yeah, that's so true. I would love to know more about what y'all envision as the future of this Black food system that we have before us. Like, I'm open to hearing all of the ideas because y'all would know really well what the needs are. So I want to hear the vision.
Um,
For me,
oh,
oh,
no, no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go
from
ahead.
a farmer, you know, who's been a urban farmer who's been doing this for I say it took me a while to call myself a farmer. I say for 5 to 7 seasons. What I found that was really important was to have equipment like clothes. Because when you're first starting off and you're learning, you're probably coming to the farm with like Converses on or some Timberlands, you know, where your feet's going to get dirty. So I always felt that it was important that young farmers actually had like clothes to wear. And within our apprenticeship at Sankofa Community Farm, we actually have about 4 apprentices right now. We have one culinary culture apprentice, and we have three different farm apprentices just learning how to be in this food sovereignty world through the various lens that Sankofa does. So yeah, that was important to make sure that they had actually clothes to wear. Another thing that I think that is important, I just lost my train of thought. What are we talking
It's
about?
okay. No worries. I think, yeah, the question was really like, and I also want to hear more about like equity and justice. Like, how do you see the landscape for Black farming and the Black food system changing over the next decade? Like, what is your vision for that? And I
Well,
think part of
yeah,
it is what you were speaking to.
yeah. So I think my vision is to make sure that young farmers have the clothes that they need to wear. I also think that there should they should be compensated for their time. Just making sure that there's a living wage for young farmers that are coming in, so that they don't have to learn a skill and also work another job. Um, I also just think that like there should be some room for people to, if you're in a program for a certain amount of time, you should be able to have funds to buy your own land or to have your own homestead or something like that, or to be a part of like having your own land. So those are just two that I have for now. If more pop up, I'll definitely bring that up.
Thank you so much. How about you, Chef Tate? What's coming up for you?
Man, I want big shit. I want, I want power. I want power diversity and power consolidation. I want to see companies that are the size of Nabisco or, the size of, I don't know, Kraft, that are founded and run by Black and brown people and minorities that are governing them with the same ideals and morals that we carry here in this conversation, meaning that we won't be seeing, families like Walmart, a single family owning a huge company. We'll see communities owning large companies and large swaths of land.
Yeah.
I think about a company like McDonald's that pretty much owns like half of Idaho because of the amount of French fries that they produce. I'm not a fan of monocropping and macro farming in that way, but I am a fan of lots and lots of small producers who are growing farms and we're aggregating from them, much like Black Farmer Fund does with the farmers that y'all work with. And there's a small potato farm here and a small potato farm there, and we're gathering potatoes for these French fries, or we're raising beef specifically in I don't know, Mississippi, where there are tons of black farmers who are raising cattle, in Texas and Black farmers raising cattle. Why aren't we why aren't we investing in the idea of large corporations that not only can wield power within the corporate structure, but also these are the same companies that are lobbying in politics and influencing votes. You know, these are the same sorts of things that are challenging our votes. So the more that we can empower ourselves as a community and think on that level, which obviously is entirely capitalistic, right? But I think again, we do live and we are operating and we are currently trying to challenge and many people dismantle the system. But as we're growing towards a shift in the way that power is wielded and influenced, we should also be considering how we can be achieving more power collectively as a community on a national and global scale. Because when you think about supply chains and you think about franchises or you think about corporations, they don't only exist within the 48. There's McDonald's in Trinidad, you know. So no, it's like that ass. Like these places
It
exist in
is.
the world, and when we think about education, and not just educating people towards a need-based idea of functionability, but educating people towards overcoming those needs and becoming leaders and in ways that are not the typical way that we explain it. I think a lot of people are like, you can be anything. You can be a CEO, or you can be a this, or you can be a that. Why don't we become more specific about where we want to see people? And there used to be a thing where in the community, especially in West Africa, families were assigned very specific jobs, and it wasn't always fair. I'm not saying it's a perfect world, but the blacksmith was a particular family, and that was their legacy, and they carried that. The medicine family was a very particular family, and they carried that, and it was generational. It just kept going and going and going. But those ideas helped ensure the holisticity of a community. We can probably implement some of those same ideas now.
Mm. So I'm hearing a lot from y'all. I think on the one hand, it's feeling micro. It's feeling like organizing folks, educating about our legacy, showing them that they're leaders, doing these apprenticeships, these trainings, doing that on the hands, like on the land training and education. But it's also this like systemic piece of creating these spaces to consolidate the power that our community already has, because it's kind of fragmented right now is what I'm feeling. Is that part of what you're talking about, like that it needs to be big?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's fragmented. I think I describe it as just not as organized. The civil rights movement was a very organized thing. Um, a lot of people don't talk about it. We talk about the big players and we talk about the big leaders, but that micro stuff that Chef Dobson is talking about leads to a Martin Luther King. So if we can become more organized in the way that we are, mobilizing ourselves from the youth to our seniors, I think that's the best way to be in discussion about how we consolidate and diversify power.
Mm. I really am sitting with this concept of like micro organizing and like using that as like a building block for the work, and also how that's ancestral. Like people been on land together, talking, plotting, figuring things out, mobilizing. And I'm seeing you shake your head like that really resonates with you, Chef Dobson. Does anything come up for you around like what you see as a community organizer?
Um, well, what comes up for me in reference to what?
I think what comes up to you in reference to like these organizing spaces and like the potential that they have for the future. I know that especially because you're working with a lot of young people, like what are the young people saying about being on the land and learning some of these things?
Well, typically, the first thing that the young people are talking about is that this is slave work, and that's always a hard thing to like, say to a young person that, yo, this isn't slave work. Like, this is basically food sovereignty. Like, we're teaching you skills that, you can help your family out with, and also just teaching them the history of, also teaching them the history of like where these crops are coming from, you know. Typically they're coming from Africa. You know, some of these crops are really excuse me, some of these crops are really important to our history and our cultural foodways.
Yeah, that really sits so heavy with me, but it's such a real valid thing of like this is an ancestral legacy, and unfortunately like our ancestors were not being compensated for this backbreaking labor, and we
Mm-hmm.
still see to this day where farmers are not receiving the compensation that they deserve for the magnitude of work that is being done. And it really brings me back to some of the farmers at Black Farmer Fund that we're working with, where some of them are really struggling to make ends meet, especially with climate change. The seasons are very unpredictable right now, and Black farmers specifically deserve a piece of the capital that is being dispersed to support with all of these different access needs. Specifically, like Black farmers are contributing to the food system, but they're making less than 1% of the overall profits in agriculture, which is crazy, right? And so on this day before Giving Tuesday, to the people that are in the chat, we really implore you to get mobilized and get active. If you have the financial means to support Black Farmer Fund or any other nonprofit that you know on a local level is supporting Black farmers, BIPOC farmers, and doing the work, that is amazing, and that's what we're here for. We got some questions in the chat, so I want to give some time for the questions in the chat, and I also want to give some time for y'all to talk about the work that you're doing at Honeysuckle and the work that you're doing at Sankofa Community Farm at Bartram Garden. So I'm going to transition into audience questions and then give y'all some space to share. That's cool.
Yeah.
So we got two questions here. The first one is, what is the biggest challenge that you all see for urban farmer collaboration? You may or may not be able to speak to these things.
Yeah, I don't think I'm for this one.
I, uh, I would say the biggest problem would be that we're so spread out, and we're all on our own little mission doing the work, but we really don't take time to connect with each other and to share like the work like while we're in the process of doing that work. So I would say um, that's one challenge that I see in Philly. I want us to connect more. We actually just had the Black Farmers Conference in Philly, and it was an amazing time. It was so many people there. And also we just got to, you know, showcase all of the urban things that we have going on in Philadelphia. So I would say that. Another thing I would say is that there's a lot of queer Black people who is like leading the stretch in this work, and I think that that needs to be recognized. You know, I think that it needs to be honored as well because they're starting to be the stewards of the land, and that's really important. And I would also say compensation. You know, like that's also a problem in urban farming is that people, you may enter into a farm, you may be volunteering, you know, getting the gist of it. And, you know, people may not even want to give you a job or hire you, you know, or they want to use you for just being a volunteer. And I think that if people are going to be on your space, I think that it's important to also give them something. You know, when people come and volunteer at Sankofa Community Farm, like we're giving you an experience like we always say your sweat, your tears, like it's a part of this land, and like we appreciate you for being here. But people also get to either leave with produce or knowledge or just a healing experience. So I think that those are the challenges, is that there's not a equal give. You know, there's a lot of take in that instance.
Um, I I would say like us as a business. I know it's not necessarily bringing urban farmers together, but something that we are doing in our space. Um, we we don't say no to almost any Black farmer that walks through our door or that we encounter. We try to make sure, Sankofa Community Farm is one farm that we've worked with this year, but we've worked with several, most of them in West Philly, a couple in North Philly, but we try to be an outlet for what is being grown. And we're actively reaching out to farmers to invite them to bring their stuff to our door. And I mean, we've gotten into trouble in our store where we just have too many strawberries or too many collard greens. Like we're all in the same zone. We're all in zone 7. Everyone's growing the same thing at the same time at different rates with different amounts, and then we take it all in, and we're left with feeling like, what do we do with all this stuff? Thankfully, we have a team of very talented chefs, and one person on our team is a fermentologist, and so we do a lot of different types of things with preservation, but like our best efforts are to, one, bring in produce from several different farms, including Philly and South Jersey, and giving them an outlet for dispersal. And that's at this juncture, that's the best thing that we can do. We hope that when we do have more money, we can have like a gathering of some sort where we're inviting the farmers and the chefs and the people from the community who are receiving on the other end through our CSA or whatever it is to all meet one another, and hopefully foster community that way. But for now, this is kind of where we're at.
Yeah. I'm hearing the need for us to self-organize and to continue to be in alignment with all of the work that we do. So if we have an opportunity to source from a Black business, why not do so? If we have the opportunity to teach something and get a little something in return, like, why not do so? And I'm also feeling called to say that even if you do not have the direct resources, can your organization do a match? Can your community come together and organize on a farm locally and provide that labor? Because something that Chef Dobson said earlier that is so, so true from the work that I've seen at Black Farmer Fund is this feeling of isolation that Black farmers have. And whether it's necessarily true depends on how much we bring ourselves together or if we want to give into that feeling. Because there's really nothing more powerful than being on land together. Like, that's, I think, one of our ancestral rights. I see some other questions that have come up in the chat. I think I'm gonna have time for 1 or 2 more. Y'all let me know which one you want to answer. So we have, how do we make food and ag appealing to the youth? And then the next question that I have here is, have you ever thought of collaborating with the farmers for a production plan pre-season? 2 very different avenues. Which is calling to y'all?
Well, I feel like I could answer both of those for Omar.
Yeah, get into it.
Maybe let's start with the youth.
Yeah, well, I would say if you had to ask me what's the difference between Sankofa Community Farm and Honeysuckle, I would say the difference is that Sankofa is a production and teaching farm and Honeysuckle is a restaurant, right? But the things that we have in common is that we both care about the product. We care that our food is very delicious and good going out to the customer, right? So this past summer, we really got to collaborate through me bringing my youth to his shop. A lot of the food that we cook down at the farm is basically outside. So for our youth to be able to go to Omar's restaurant and see behind the scenes and get to talk to him, that was like one of the ways that like we inspire youth is by like taking them on trips. And when I tell you, when they all came back, they were just so excited to taste his honey bread. And like, I think you made okra that day or something. It was something that they harvested and you had board. No, it was callaloo. Yeah, all of the kids were really excited that you cooked the food that they actually grew. Yeah, and they just was so ecstatic about that. So I think that if you can feed a young person and if you can pay a young person some money to do this work, like they'll enjoy it. They'll continue to come back. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I would also like to and I know we haven't gotten to do this, and I'm actually mentioning this to you right now. But something that I feel like we are very good at Honeysuckle is branding and media, and getting the word out there about our business in a way that's very particularly engaging. And I have to take my hat off to my wife Sybil, who does a lot of that on the back end. But I think I saw someone in the chat mention, either through TikTok or whatever. Most youth now, my own 16-year-old son included, when you ask them what they want to be when they grow up, first of all, they're already grown up, and second of all, they want to be a content creator, right? So just really meeting children where they're at. We were all teenagers once and had adults telling us what we should be doing. Something that I really appreciated about what Sankofa did when they brought the children into the shop is that they came into the shop having already done something, and so all I needed to do was build upon what was already there. And when you think about children in that way, instead of imposing on them, what we think is right, they come in with the foundation all their own. And I think that might be the best way to engage with them. I didn't. Chef Dobson likes to joke with me and say, "Yeah, you're a celebrity chef," but I didn't show up to them like that because they don't really care. I'm not a celebrity to them. They don't really care. They care about themselves, and we want them to know that we care about them too.
Y'all are so fun. You are both celebrity chefs to me, and I'm so thankful to have been here with you both. I am so excited to see the activity in the chat, and I hope to see folks here online and also offline, because we have a lot of opportunities to engage. You guys hear me okay? I'm hearing like an echo.
Yeah, you have an echo.
So weird. Okay. Well, I am glad that the echo is only tuning in here at the end, and we do not want anybody to forget that Giving Tuesday is tomorrow. So we are raising funds for Black Farmer Fund, BFF Fund 2.0, which is a $20 million investment fund for Black farmers and food business owners in the Northeast. Our investment committee is currently making decisions around this initial round of investment for BFF Funds 2.0, so be on the lookout and share, give, spread the love, and thank you both and your community so much for being here. For more information on how to donate, check out the link in my bio.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Yes, follow Chef Dobson on IG, follow Chef Omar Tate, follow Honeysuckle Provisions.
Yeah.
And thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you, Onyx. Appreciate
Have a
you.
good evening, y'all.
Thanks, Chef. See you.